I'm glad to be here on this motion that acknowledges the devastation and the impacts of the floods in October 2022. I think it's fitting that we're having a regional sitting, as I mentioned earlier in my member statement. I want to start off by acknowledging the traditional owners of the Audioora. It was great to hear from Uncle Rick both last night and this morning. I think the President absolutely spot on when he talks about every time, whether it's a smoke ceremony, welcome to country, we learn something. And I'm often, I think about connection to land, particularly, here we are today talking about floods. Myself, growing up on the farm, I often think back to the contours of land where water would sit, where we would have flooding and boggy patches, and I'd bog the ute repetitively year after year in the same place and not learn from my mistakes. But yeah, I think that connection to land and is important, and to acknowledge that and to think about that. So thank you, Uncle Rick. And natural disasters are a terrible thing, and as Miss Broad pointed out, they're becoming more frequent and more severe in their devastation. And one of my earliest memories is the CFA trucks coming up the driveway with local volunteers coming to put a fire out on our farm. And I know that all of us are very thankful to all volunteers that assist us, whether it be the CFA or SES in disasters and bushfires and floods and whatever it may be. And hearing Tara speak this morning, a couple of people have touched on it so far, but to think about the initial trauma, but also the prolonged disruption to people's lives, whether it be education, accommodation, where people are living, what it means from a family perspective, with families moving around, with houses being uninhabitable, but also what it means for sports groups, for community groups, because we know that community is so important, particularly in the regions where there can be more space, more distance between people, and those bonds of community groups are particularly important. And so it's in these times that we see our volunteers, the mixture of, it doesn't matter where people are from, whether it's local, farmers, townies, whatever, everyone coming together, whether it's across regions or indeed whether it's across state borders. And we know that we had people assisting from all across Australia and bring in, whether that's personnel, watercraft skills, experience, to help assist with the disaster and assist each other. And in the region I represent, Eastern Victoria, obviously we've had significant disasters in the last 5 years, with obviously the fires in 1920, recent floods, and very recently Buchan Cave floods and deaths occurring there tragically, and Merbau North with the winds that flattened the town and surrounding towns and left a terrible trail of destruction that work is ongoing still now. I did just want to pick up a few things from those opposite. I'm going to go through and talk about what occurred during the event, clean up of the event, the investment we make. But I do think it's worth noting that we are here talking about natural disasters, and as I said, it's noted they are getting more severe and more frequent. And those opposite don't seem to want to talk about a plan to deal with the driving causes. So, to put it quite simply, if we acknowledge and accept that as more carbon enters the atmosphere and it warms up, we get more severe weather impact outcomes. If there is more moisture in the atmosphere and we have rains, or we get mini tornadoes, or we get prolonged droughts, we get worse and worse outcomes. And I've spoken in the Parliament many times about how those impacts impact all Victorians, whether it's through storms or whether it's through prices at supermarkets for food and groceries, because the more drought years we have, the less sustainable our farms are, the more prices have to go up. And every year we delay action, and every year we wait, and I wanted to talk on this in the previous contribution, I didn't get an opportunity to. There was talk about amendments to the to bills around emission reductions back from 2007, legislation that was set up and enacted. And I'm hearing questions is it relevant? Yes, it's absolutely relevant. It's relevant to our communities that don't want to see worse and worse disasters occurring to their homes, to their farmlands, to their natural places. So it is absolutely, this conversation is absolutely relevant. So as I was saying before, whether it's hitting people in the hip pocket around supermarket prices, food and whatnot, whether it's insurance bills, because every time an insurance bill comes to the letterbox and it's higher, that is cost of living that's impacting on families. It is. And your side's inaction for 20 plus years on climate change and federally, I think everyone here will remember Scott Morrison sitting in Parliament with a lump of coal and, you know, anyway, I'll just slowly move through things because I know that you find it all quite amusing. These are real cost of living, these are real quality of life implications for people right here, right now. And there is a cost. Those opposite like to talk about, you know, money's not free, taxpayers' money's not free. Quite rightly, and I spoke in my member statement this morning earlier about people in the cities respect and value for regional Victorians, for what regional Victorians contribute, whether it's through food or manufacturing or the variety of things, or ensuring that we have access to our natural spaces so that from the cities you can come out and enjoy those. So I think Victorians are happy to come together, whether it's through volunteering or through our tax system, to pick up the bill and fix the issues of devastation as they come. But if we just run blindly and don't acknowledge the fact this issue is going to get worse and worse, and we're going to have more frequent disasters, and the bill is going to get bigger and bigger, to me it's just like running headfirst into a brick wall. I just do not understand it. And you know, those opposite are saying they haven't been in government. I think politics broadly, whether it's in Victoria or federally in this country, the coalition at basically every step have tried to stop action on climate, and they're doing it right now with nuclear. First they wanted small modular nuclear reactors. Now they want large nuclear. I don't want to go too far into that, we'll leave it there. But it's just another example of them being unwilling or unable to deal with the science and the reality. And I raise this because in the last bill we're in here, we talk about being sensitive to issues. The opposition were firing off at us about gas and the resources under our feet. They would rather frack farmland and get resources out, not worrying about water tables, not worrying about farmers.
Point of order.
Point of order.
Acting President, could you please bring the member back to the actual motion, which is on the 2022 floods? Thank you.
Thank you. I think it might be easier if I just ask the member to come back to the bill. Motion.
Sorry, Miss Broad and Mr McCracken were both talking about frequency of events, severity of events, and you laugh. You sit there laughing, but it's real. If you don't think it's real, why did you say it? You said.
Through the chair. Through the chair.
Point of order.
Point of order.
Thank you, President. It'd really be appreciated if Mr McIntosh could continue his contribution without continual interruption.
Mr McIntosh.
Thank you.
Yes, there he
it is, if you're talking about future events and investment in ensuring that they don't occur again, mitigation and adaptation, we must do both. So I think we agree on adaptation. Let's ensure that water levels don't rise, that people's houses don't flood, that community assets don't flood. But I think where we're not in agreement, when your members are standing here saying we have resources under our feet that should be tapped, I won't go into what it does for local water tables and environment, all that sort of stuff, or farmland, all that sort of stuff. But the extraction of those resources and the emissions that causes and what that does for future disasters absolutely has to be acknowledged. So this event, as has been touched on, it severely impacted more than 1,000 properties, and 2,000 people have accessed emergency and temporary accommodation since the floods began. There were lives lost, and that's been acknowledged. The Parliament passes on its condolences to the families of the deceased today. And others, and I also will acknowledge and thank Victoria Police, the SES, CFA, Lifesaving Victoria, and Esther, which is now 000, for the nearly 1,000 water rescues that they performed. And it's been mentioned a number of times just how big this disaster was, with recovery funding arrangements being activated for 63 local government areas. So there has been substantial financial support provided. There was $466 million for business and community support flood recovery grants programs. That was supporting eligible businesses and not-for-profit and community organisations. $245 million for primary producer support through flood recovery grants and concessional loans and transport support programs. $71.6 million in financial support through business and not-for-profit concessional loan programs, and $54 million for flood recovery for small business relief. There was $44.7 million for a range of business recovery support, and $1.8 million for tourism and events to flood impacted communities. And just touching on that tourism side of things, one of the reasons why I'm really happy that we're here, we had the market set up at lunch, all of us are buying local product, is that it's important to get that tourist economy happening again. Sometimes people are hearing about these events and how terrible they are, which they are, and Minister Shing spoke earlier about ensuring that local water bodies are safe and not full of sewage and whatever else, so it's safe for people to come back in and be in the area. But once that has occurred, it's really important to get people in spending money in the local economy, and I think that's something that is important that this government has focused on over time, of natural disasters to support local regional economies. And on the clean-up, there was $150 million for the state coordinated clean-up activities and $40 million for a gate fee rebate for flood waste. Financial and legal assistance is something that I'm quite passionate about. I worked for the Financial and Consumer Rights Council, helping people in financial hardship, and traditionally that has been ensuring that people in hardship, whether it's for a variety of reasons with their essential services, telcos, mortgages, those sorts of things, making sure that companies are treating them well. Disaster relief is a bigger and bigger area where we have dedicated financial counsellors both in Victoria and Australia, because there are so many unseen issues that come out of disasters, natural disasters, that people aren't prepared for, and it stems all the way from underinsurance through to just being able to get by when income isn't in, when people are unable to work. I'm going to run out of time, so I just want to say I'm very glad we've been able to hold the regional sitting here today in the region, and our thoughts are with everyone, and congratulations to everyone who's helped out over the time so far. Thank you. Thank you, President.
Thank you, Mr. McIntosh.